All right. Thanks, Patreon supporters, for joining us for the spoiler talk for The Bank by Bentley Little. Livius, do you want to kick off with talking about the two things that gave you the chills? Because I think I want to hear what they are.
So the first one I actually messaged you about. It is. Yeah. The reason I said this is real is because there's really no supernatural element at play. This is somebody who's in their right mind, but it takes place in a like kind of like an old folks home, but in the like the kind where you have your own apartment, like assisted living, I guess is what it would be called. Like you have your own apartment, but there's always like people around to help you with shit. And it's this fucking poor old lady who's like blowing dudes for like $10 to like get by. And that really fucking affected me. Like, how do I say this? The fact that it was somebody that was elderly that had to do that bothered me much more than if it was just a prostitute in the story, like a down and out lady who's doing this. I don't know, for some reason this elderly lady sucking dick for like $10 a pop in a retirement home just really, really bothered me, more so than like the bank manager having his face bashed in or whatever the fuck happened to that kid's parents, right? Like all that stuff happened. Then all of a sudden I'm like, fuck, this is some heavy shit right here.
Yeah, because you would think that in a society we would honor and protect the elderly and stuff like that. And obviously, like, this person is just borderline hopeless if that's how they're trying to get by. It's pretty bad.
Well, and then it goes a little deeper than that too, right? So there's that. And then she's approached by Pickering from the bank. I'm like, no, we'll give you a job. You don't want to keep doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then what does she wind up doing?
That.
The same fucking thing, just for the goddamn bank. So
yeah, pretty bad.
The other one is the cop's wife, whose name eludes me at the moment. Dude, that shit where he finds her at the house with the fucking dummies made up to look like him and the kids. Holy shit. And that's why I said, I don't know how real that is. The other, the Helene story that was felt just a little too real for me. That one just straight up gave me the chills, dude, when he realizes that she's living with this fucking family of dummies that she's pretending is her actual, like they're mock-ups of her actual family. That fucked me up a little bit.
It's just eerie because what would cause someone to do that? Because it has nothing to do with the bank, as far as I'm aware. It's just she kind of snapped and it kind of created a fantasy family or a fantasy life that was better than her actual life. It's really, that was That was probably one of the creepiest parts in the book for sure. I agree.
Sure, and that could have been like some unintended mastery, right? So maybe it did have something to do with the bank, right? 'Cause she was getting like mortgages for people, so she was kind of in with the bank a little bit. But the fact that it was left completely unexplained, I think made it even more creepy than it would have been if there was some actual bank lead up to this whole thing, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's one of the better moments. I'm trying to think back. Oh shit, here we go. What was the not Dr. Sleep. What was the book with the guy driving around in the car? Just girl dancing, fucking the ballet to fucking fight the devil. God damn it.
Oh my God.
Because that had a moment like that. You know what I'm talking about?
No. I think we've talked about this before and I totally blanked on it before.
Dude,
too.
They were like in the city, but they could drive to like this dream area of the city. And there was like a hellish nightclub there, and at some point this girl dances ballet. But there was the time stealers. The old guy would steal time. He had the nurse with him. It was very Alice Cooper-y.
What the hell was that?
You know what I'm talking about, though, right? They would steal time, and then the element of surprise towards the end was that someone was able to collect some of that time themselves and like use it to defeat them. Shit.
I barely remember that, dude.
It's Kadri, the Grand. No, was it the Grand Dark? It was not the Grand Dark.
No, it was not the Grand Dark.
No. Well, this is the worst spoiler talk ever.
This is all staying in.
Oh my God, it's gonna come to me. Maybe not this week, but at some point I'm gonna remember what that fucking book was. I really like that story, but that was the last one to really genuinely creep me out.
Yeah. Creepy. Are you still gonna try to remember this, or are we moving on?
I was good. No, we're gonna move on. I was gonna try to Google search it, but the string of words I put together, I don't know.
All right. Do you want to talk plot a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So, for people who just want to hear what happened in the story and not read it, basically, the whole, like, I would say 90% of the book is like Act 2, like the stuff that happens. There's very little setup. It's all just like the bank's here and it's fucking everything up, and then like up until like, because Livius, we talked earlier. We talked yesterday before recording this. Livius had like 25 pages left, and I was thinking to myself, man, when I was at 25 pages left, I was thinking, how the fuck are they going to resolve this? Because it was still just, it kept going that far toward the end of the book. And it resolves super, super fast, having to do with the prologue that we skipped over talking about, where basically the bank came to be because way back in the past, someone got denied a loan, and the kid of the person who got denied was pissed and said, one day I'm going to have a bank where I help everybody. And they start praying about it. And that brings about this like demon bank, basically. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was a prayer to the money god. The god of money.
God of banks.
Yeah.
And, and then the resolution is, this bank was created, from the beginning of the book, and bad people kidnapped the bank prayer kid and held them hostage while this supernatural bank, they used it to basically like strip communities of all of their resources and stuff, is my understanding of what was going on. And then the resolution was let the kid go. The kid breaks this like little totem thing and everything's back to normal, right?
Essentially. So this is tough. I liked the idea of the resolution. I just think that it probably needed a little more meat and shouldn't have tied itself up in like 4 pages.
Yeah, it was like a 5 or 6 page. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like you found out really, really late in filming that this was your last season of a TV show. And you were like, oh shit, we only have 2 episodes left. How do we wrap all this up?
Yeah, kind of. Well, and I wonder, like, because like the bookends, the prologue and the epilogue basically say, hey, this is what started it. And then the epilogue basically says, okay, it's just going to continue happening like this because this evil bank entity is pushing people to make these bad choices or whatever. So it felt like the plot was structured like a TV episode, like a one-off TV episode where like you have to introduce this and like just end it all within like 40 minutes. So like usually like the part at the end seems like it wraps up super fast. That's kind of how it felt to me.
Yeah. But I liked the idea, and that's what makes it so tough. It's like you summed up exactly what was given to us, but it's like I felt like we had to infer a lot from that, and that could have been done a little bit differently.
So fleshing out the end, or fleshing out the after the kid is discovered in the room thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I can agree.
Sure.
But here's what I'll say. After kind of understanding when I finished the book what the book really was trying to do, I really don't feel like the plot aspect was what he was focusing on. I feel like he was just trying to like make banks look as evil as possible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it, and that's the whole thing. So I'm gonna talk about this here because I don't want to say too much on the podcast, but this to me felt reminiscent of like good, fun, like 80s, 90s horror. So I'll say like anything a little lighter from Stephen King, definitely like Dean Koontz, some of his lighter fare, Richard Lehman, in that like there's a big cast of characters. They're all kind of dealing with the same thing. The thing is ridiculous at its core. like people just go way too far with dealing with the stuff from the bank. And aren't at all freaked out by things the bank couldn't possibly know, like the gambling thing for the priest and stuff. But you like suspend your disbelief of that in order to be along for a fun ride.
Right.
So I really like that aspect of the book, even if, some of it was a little on the overdone side. But I guess if you're going to make the bank some kind of demonic bank, like you have to go hard. Does that make sense? Like you can't half-ass having an evil bank in a book. It's like you're either going to go balls to the wall or you're going to write a book that's not about a fucking bank. It's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah. And honestly, and I think that, and I was trying to say it when we weren't spoiling shit, but like the things that the bank did that were just like to the level of absurdity was probably my favorite part of the book. Like, not necessarily like the Helene part of like forcing her to be like,
right. Yeah.
Like a serial fellationist, but like how the kid with the paper route would just showed up one day and he's like, you owe me $20, and they're like, I don't have a subscription to the paper. Well, now everybody does. Like that type of like just absurd like extortion. Those elements in the book were my favorite parts. Was just like, how is the bank going to insinuate itself into every aspect? The diner that starts charging outrageous amounts of money for food just so basically it'll go out of business. That's the stuff that I really enjoyed.
Dude, I mean, we could go, if we just want to talk about favorite stuff, they total that guy's car.
Oh yeah.
They show up and total his car.
The Burger King.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
They repossess another guy's car because they forced him to overdraft and then wound up with like a $3 fee, like the maintenance fee for his account. And then they repossess his car.
Yeah. Or like, and then not necessarily that it's entertaining, but how their practices are just so blatantly evil. Like they fund, like the most irresponsible people. And whenever they basically choose, like the rival bookstore, they basically kill the guy like less than a month into opening because he's not, performing up to their expectations, which are probably completely absurd to begin with. So yeah, it's just like so blatantly over the top evil and ridiculous.
And fun.
Very fun too.
That was fun. Yeah.
Hey, I want to say, I looked up Bentley Little while you were talking about like the feel of the book being like very old school horror. I mean, he started writing horror novels, publishing in 1990. So he's probably of that like older school type of, type of dude.
Yeah. And like I said, this felt, and not in any way, but it's just that style of horror books that I, essentially, was reading when I was a youngster. And it was just a great, I don't want to say throwback, make it sound like, only feel like old school stuff, but it was fun to of all the horror books we've read, this is the one that most, other than obviously reading One Rainy Night by Richard Lehman or Night in Lonesome October, this is the closest I've gotten to that of books we've reviewed.
For sure. Anything else about spoilers?
I don't really think so. I think we covered pretty much everything that needed covering. I just really wanted to talk out those two scenes, man. They were that was good shit, man.
There was, all right. So one thing that about this book that, and I'm trying to find the best way to say this that doesn't make me sound like a weirdo, but it felt like, aside the obvious stuff that we already talked about with the old lady, that sex had a weird presence in this book. Like there was more of an insinuation of sex stuff than it actually happening. Like Anita gets flashed by the dude that she almost has an affair with, and she gets propositioned by the bank guy at one point. And it seemed like this would be the kind of story where like when society's breaking down and all these crazy like absurd things are happening, like that's like fertile ground for a gratuitous sex scene. So I was kind of surprised that there was less of that in the book. Does that, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. If you're Bill Clinton and don't consider blowjob sex, because there was a plethora of that happening in this book. All from a geriatric lady, for fuck's sake. You want to know what's interesting, though? Something that you said, and I wonder if this was intentional or not, because this puts an interesting spin on things. So Worthington, so after the Stephen incident, right? Like she's been kind of flirting with
Yeah.
the gardening guy, right? And then he comes on too strong, obviously, by exposing himself, and she's like completely disgusted with him. I wonder if Worthington's approach, where he turned on some kind of sex appeal, because no one else found him sexy, right? Like nobody
Right.
else mentioned, like they said he was really well dressed or whatever, but no other woman in the book ever, gets hot and bothered being around him except for Anita.
Hmm.
Either Worthington misread what she wanted because he knew what everybody wanted, right?
Right.
Like he knew what your deal was. Either he misread it, which would make it really interesting, or he knew she was down to cheat on her old man, so that was what he was kind of offering her. Where with everybody else, it was, here's money for your gambling, we'll
Right.
finance your home, we'll pay for your whatever. For her, maybe he interpreted that infidelity was the way to get to her.
Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting interaction because of all the characters in the book, I figured that like it would be that it would be that thing where like she has a moment of weakness and she's angry at herself for it, but then later on the forces of evil push her like a little bit farther into that, like, and he backed off of like doing that thing more than I expected to. Yeah, so it does kind of add an interesting element to it. Yeah, I agree.
Actually, that was interesting. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed this edition of Spoiler Talk. I know it's been a little bit since we've done it, and quite honestly, I just don't know that there was a lot of spoiler-worthy discussion, although we've read some great books. I don't know that they all merited the spoiler talk treatment like this one did. I'll be honest, I don't know if we're going to have one next week. I don't know that Shakespeare for Squirrels is going to lead to a lot of spoiler talk that we have to do, but you never know. All I can say is, there's a Stephen Hall book coming up eventually, and I imagine we might have the longest spoiler talk ever. So thank you for being a contributor. We really appreciate it. Listen, if you know anybody else who you think would benefit from this kind of stuff or anything else, and when I say that, I'm saying it teasingly because we have something else coming up for you guys shortly, turn them on. Have them send us $1 a month. Donate $1 for them, and just set them up with an account. That's an even better idea.
Okay, I can't.
No,
I can't disagree with that. That's
yeah. There you go.